about there being so much sickness around them as well, because I was trying to put together this family. And what I discovered was that they lost 5 of their children, and one of them they lost 3 weeks after they arrived in 1832, after they came from Virginia to Montgomery County. So I started thinking, well, where's this daughter buried? And I started coming across multiple family members that I couldn't find where they were buried. This is one of the actual letters from July 7th, 1845. I wanted to show you his handwriting. So there were several letters spanning, I think like 1836 all the way. He didn't die until 1860s. There's quite a few letters. I want to say there were several in the 1840s. There might have been 6, 7 letters. So this is the family that I started coming across. I started to write it down. And so you'll notice that there's Crawfords up there. Well, he wasn't the first in his family to come to Montgomery County. He followed his sister Margaret out here, and she was married to William Crawford. They were from Augusta County and Bath County, Virginia, and they had left a few years before them. They arrived in 1829. So when William R. Bratton and his wife Polly came to Montgomery County, they were staying with his sister Margaret and her husband William Crawford. So I was looking all over the patent lands and then could not find anything of significance. You can see 1832 all the way to 1853 are the burials that I could not find in the nearby Union Hill Cemetery. If you're familiar with Mace, they have a church, Union Hill Presbyterian Church, with its cemetery, but it didn't start to the 1840s. So I had several people that weren't in there. So it started to gel, like where are all these groups of people? So I started looking at deeds because I knew from the patent maps that there were all these sections of land that William Crawford had bought from the government. But I also found a deed where he bought land in 1829, and he bought it in section 3 of Township 18, range 4. So that was an interesting piece of information. So I knew that's where William R. Bratton and his family were staying when they came out. So I found a couple pieces of evidence in my research that is the jackpot, so to speak. I found a reference. I don't have these 2 pieces of evidence in my stuff. I was doing this research around 13 years ago, and I looked and looked and looked and looked, and I couldn't find it. But what I found was an article in 1917 in the Crawfordsville Weekly Journal, and it was a Bratton reunion, and in it, it said they were going to go visit the old Crawford family cemetery. And I was like, oh my goodness, there it is. So then I called Delhi, because everybody calls Delhi, and said, how do I think I have the cemetery, I found a reference to it, how do I find where it is? And she said, look at the deeds. The deeds used to be at the courthouse, now they're at the government center. So I went to the courthouse and started finding all the deeds. This particular piece of ground that was bought from David Barnes in 1829 passed to William Crawford and Margaret Crawford's son Nathan after his dad died. And so in 1853, he sold this piece of ground. In this deed was a description of the cemetery. So that's when I hit pay dirt as far as evidence that this cemetery existed. So I've shown you, this is a plat map. So this is the section right here where the arrows are, this whole square right here. And it is like the east half, I have the full description in a slide coming up. So I don't think I put what year that is, or this year, but you can see it's different homeowners. So what I did at that point was I contacted the surveying office and thought, oh, I need some help, because I don't know, this is almost over my head. So I sent a Hail Mary email to somebody at the surveying office, kind of laid out what I had found, and they were interested, so I was like, yes. So they were actually coming up with people that had bought this ground, you know, through the 40s, 50s, and so some of these names matched some of the names that they had told me, so that was great. Oh, I guess I do have the year on that one. I can't read it from here though. So this is a picture that the surveying office sent me, and this is the description that was in the 1853 deed of describing where the cemetery was. So based on that information and based on this east half of the southeast quarter of section 3, township 18, range 4, that's the circle we came up with of where the cemetery lies. So that was exciting. So I had all this information. I had the article, I had the deed, I had the email thread from the surveying office. So I contacted Jeannie Dinius, she came and talked to us earlier this year, I believe, or maybe late last year. She's the cemetery guru at the state office. She's now retired. So she said to send her all this stuff and that she would put it in the state cemetery database. I thought, because I had been reading a book on a cemetery down south, I guess I thought that if there was a cemetery and you're a descendant, you could access it, but technically, if it's on private land, it's up to the homeowner to provide the accessibility or not. So if you want to know any cemetery rules, you can go to the DNR website, and they have all the frequently asked questions there. However, she did add it to the database, and I wanted to share with you, if you don't know how to get to this statewide database, the government has this website called SHARD. And so this is the cemetery registry, but I am going to click the link just to show you what it looks like when you go in as a guest. But this has a drop-down menu, and like our table was talking about the sites in the inventory book. They've since digitized a lot of that, and that's one of the things on the drop-down menu. And then you can, like I helped Eva Legg when she was here before COVID. I think one of her properties is found out in the database, and so there was a bunch of pictures because they went around in the 80s and did all these site inventories. But this, for the cemetery registry, this is what I was interested in. I did try to put more information in, like the section and the range in the township, and nothing came up. It only came up when I put in Montgomery. And then it was at the very end, there's a little bit of information. She didn't put much in there, and she did have the establishment as 1853, but that was more about the deed. We know that there were people, like Martha Bratton was buried in 1832 there, so it was in use a lot longer than that. If the Crawfords had any kids in there, they could have had one from 1829 or 1830, I don't know. But I'm going to show you what this looks like. Let me click it. So this is what comes up, and all I ever do is just enter SHARD as a guest. And they do want you to come down here and click you accept the terms. Continue. And well, it looks like the same screen. Okay, so this should be there. This is straight to the structural surveys. Let's see if we go to the welcome screen. Sorry, it's not going to that main screen that you saw in my slide. Oh, I guess this is it. Okay, sorry. So here you see theaters, county surveys, cemetery registry, historic bridges, and national register. So you can browse through all of these. They have the county here that you can pull it down and do that. I'll go to the cemetery registry real quick and then pull down Montgomery just to show you. And then scroll down and search. See if it calculates it. I think I did this earlier. Yeah, there's like 3 pages down here. And some of them you can see, some of them have pictures. And so this is what Jeannie, it's her database, things that she added. And Crawford, the Crawford Cemetery is all the way at the end. But I just want to share that with you guys in case you want to look some stuff up or look up a property under the surveys and inventories. So that's about it. Currently, I did contact the township trustee, Union Township trustee. It's, even though a lot of the Crawford and Bratton stuff is in Mace, which is the next one over, this particular piece of ground is in Union Township. And it's like 3 miles east of town off of 136. So the homeowners are paying their taxes, so it's definitely private. If anybody knows who lives out that way, or you have an idea who might own that ground, feel free to contact them. I don't know who lives there, so I was kind of content to get this on the database and then also put it in my book so that if any descendants were wondering and it was a brick wall or something like that, they could, at least there was something out there that kind of put the story out there. So that's it.
So have you ever been to the cemetery?
No, because it's on private land. I mean, it'd be great to contact the homeowner, so I don't know what's there. I don't know if there's any old gravestones. It was pretty early, 1832, so I don't know. I don't know if there's a fence. It sounds like in this 1917 article that they were going to it, so maybe they kept it up really nice. So I don't know what's back there. I don't know if the stones are buried. I don't know. So if anybody knows the current Union Township
Is there
trustee.
an address for the property?
No, I don't know. So on the,
There's not a house out there.
I've driven by it, not the house. There's a long driveway. And so I wasn't gonna drive up the driveway.
Is there a number on the driveway?
On the mailbox out front?
This has been 13 years ago.
Because you
and
might
I
be
don't
able to,
remember.
if you get an address, could you look it up on the Beekman database?
Probably. I don't think there was a mailbox out there that I saw.
Where
Or maybe it's across the road and I didn't know which one went with the property. I don't know. I drove by it a couple times to see if I could figure
Before that, Walnut Fork Creek.
Yeah. I do know that the surveying office knows who lives there because they checked to see if they were paying taxes, because I guess if somebody's not paying taxes on their property, then they can, I don't know, it opens the door into possibly doing something, I don't know. So anyway, that's where we're at with it, but I know, it's so tantalizingly close.
Yes.
But at least it's on the survey, and so, the registry.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know, is there a state law controlling access and ownership rights in murky situations?
So it's private versus public. If it's a public cemetery, then by law, you can have access to it, but if it's a private cemetery, it's all about land ownership, and they have a right to bar people from walking on their property, even if a descendant wants to see that cemetery.
Yeah, I was just wondering, cemetery land seems like it might merit separate special treatment under state law because of descendants and all of that. Despite being privately owned, I would hope that there's some way that reasonable parties could gain access even without.
Only if the landowner is reasonable also.
Right, I know, I thought this too, and Jeannie was like,
Well, didn't you guys like redo the O'Neill cemetery, and then you had access, and then they took the access away to get to the O'Neill cemetery?
Say what?
The O'Neill cemetery at Youngsville,
Uh-huh.
they redid that cemetery, somebody paid for that, but to get access, they denied our access after they redid that cemetery several years later. Some new landowners came in and said you cannot access that cemetery, they will give you access to it.
Wow.
I mean,
Isn't that right, Dellie?
Yeah, they did.
yeah. A lot of times it's probably for liability purposes, I
But
think some people are worried about,
I seen
things
O'Neill
happening to
cemetery
people.
when it was, when I was on the fire department at Alamo, and this cemetery was very, I mean, there's Civil War soldiers in there and everything, and it is a fairly large cemetery actually, and it was like run down, they went in there and cleaned it, and some family member paid to have that restored, but, and it was really nice when, next time I went into it, like a couple times, but now then I heard here in the last year or two that the new landowner, I don't know where they're from, if they're locally or Indianapolis, but they're denying us that we cannot go to the Mill Cemetery.
Yeah, our genealogy club was the one that cleaned that up.
Genealogy.
And Cam
I
Cox was
mean,
involved in it. And I think there was like 3 stones standing to start out with, and when we had the dedication was over 100
Oh, yeah.
standing.
It was very nice the last time I was in it, cause I seen it when it was with, yuccas and whatever, like it was very hard to read.
Well, I think this is why it's so, why Find a Grave is so key, because even if one person can get in there and then take pictures and get them up on Find a Grave, then it's not so dire for genealogists that are trying to, you know, get those fun gravestone pictures, but I know sometimes they're bigger than, you know, the
I
cemetery
think
is quite
Kim
large.
Hancock put them on Facebook. I
Yeah,
think they're
Are
on
they on
Facebook.
there?
The O'Neill Cemetery is documented, I mean, I've seen pictures on Find a Grave and stuff, but,
She took
O'Neill
pictures
is
before
a
and after.
township cemetery, but
oh,
you have to cross private land to get to it.
right, it's Ripley Township, so it is a,
But it is a township
it
cemetery.
is.
Well, there is generally a law that landlocked properties must be allowed access by
Right.
some adjacent property owner. Maybe money has to change hands.
Not in Indiana. We've been through this with Jeannie.
I guess I've heard that in Illinois, maybe.
Yeah.
Thank you, Amy.
Oh, thank you.
What does the charge stand for? Yeah, state historical.